lunchtime, you'll see.
All right, let's call things to order. Roll call, please.
All right. Chair West,
Present?
Vice Chair Miller-Juvet is
Absent.
absent. Ed Contreras,
Here.
Diane Foster, here. Cameron Fox, here. Taylor Funru, here. Rich Miller is absent. Bob Silverford is absent, and Lori Zwingley here. All right.
All right, great. Approval of the minutes. Everybody received them. Is there any changes or additions?
Move to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, I'll sign it. Okay, so board announcements. We'll start with Ed. Do you have anything you want to share, Ed?
No, not really.
Okay. Cameron? All right, well, I've got something. I don't know if you saw it in the Oregonian on 2 days ago, on the 18th. The Oregon Top 20 Crime-Free Cities rankings. And we were number 3. Behind Westland was number 1, then LO, and Canby, then New Burgundy were the top 5. So
Congratulations.
once again, we're leading the charge. So, Lori.
The Sherwood Police Foundation has now set next year's fundraiser for May 19. So if you are all in town, come join us. We are also putting together, well, we will be present at National Night Out, which is coming up on August 1st. And our annual awards dinner is going to be February 2nd. That one's not open to the public, but it's good for you guys to know.
All right, thank you. Diane?
Nothing new for me.
Good. Okay, all right. The business for tonight is follow-up to some discussions we had last month. And we had some discussions that I raised about doing some public opinion, and then the chief, when he had his time, staff time, he talked about the matrix, the staffing study, and some things that have changed and some inconsistencies as he saw in the report. And we had a pretty healthy discussion around all that. And so tonight, I want to set up a process where we can get ourselves together in reviewing this report. And everybody should have seen it, but I want to go through a little bit that I saw in it that I wanted to raise. And with us preparing ourselves, then Council President Harris, we will be asking for a joint work session. We're not ready now, but if you could take that to the council and say in a month or two, we're going to be requesting that. But we want to spend time ourselves looking over where we're at today based on the staffing study that was done last year and how things have changed with the staffing that have been hired. And then we'd like to have a joint work session. So I want to flag that for you. So when I went through here, and I just want to open it up for discussion, there was 2 things that I looked at. First is how the department looked at certain things where they saw a need for improvement, I guess is the way I describe it. And this was done again the winter of 16. The first thing that jumped out at me is that 59% of the staff said there wasn't sufficient staffing to provide for the services as they saw. So over half. And then the second one that was similar to that, 55% said there wasn't enough staff to perform safely and effectively. Kind of the same sort of concern. The next thing that jumped out and had a significant percentage, that was 77%, was related to staffing for investigations. And we've had that discussion with the chief and how, patrol officers do a lot of it. We only have one investigator, right?
Correct, one detective.
Okay. Then the fourth thing that jumped out in my review was that there needed 64%, there wasn't enough staffing to cover school-related issues. And we've been hearing that from the public too, so. And then lastly, 50% or half of the staff said that there wasn't enough to serve the internal and external records-related functions. And so that's both internal and external. So that's again coming from the staff. In terms of the public, 60% felt that there was additional resources needed. They didn't necessarily say why. And that 53% said yes to a modest tax increase. Well, things have changed in society in a year and a half, and how people view taxes, we'll just have to see. So some of the stuff that came out of the matrix study that I found in terms of recommendations, so that was staff and the public findings that were significant as I read through it. Recommendations outside of the things that the council dealt with regards to changing schedules and possibly having Washington County pick up some stuff. There was discussion in the study about creating a community services officer. I guess, Captain Daniels, could you explain more what that is? Because the second part of that had to do with property and evidence and code compliance and changing that into one of these community service officers too. So could you help explain to us what?
I'll try and give you a 30,000-foot view on what a code enforcement officer or what a CSO or a community service officer would be. So a community service officer would be basically a non-sworn employee or would have limited sworn capacity to be able to do a variety of non-emergent tasks that police officers would have to do, such as maybe take a crime report that didn't have suspect information, didn't require follow-up investigation, could assist on traffic crashes, could do a variety of different tasks to include, assisting with security at crime scenes or traffic direction during parades and just a variety of different tasks that we wouldn't necessarily want to tie up a sworn police officer who would be able to respond to an emergency on. So that would free up a sworn officer to be able to do what it is that we want them to do. So take some of those lower level tasks off the plate of the average police officer.
Okay. Do we have one of those now?
So we have a code compliance officer / evidence technician who works basically 50% in code compliance, 50% in evidence, and he kind of fulfills that task to a certain degree, but not fully. And so we would like to kind of change his position around a little bit and make him into more of a community service officer. As you saw in the study, there was some talk about the community service officer being able to cover, the front counter and maybe some of those other tasks. So all that would be a part of the discussion.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, can volunteers help with some of that? Or does it have to be someone who's actually hired on by the PD?
Well, that's a good question. You know, we have volunteers that currently help out with filing and a variety of other tasks. We've integrated one volunteer to help out in the evidence process because there's a significant amount of filing and paperwork that goes along with the evidence process. So she's here one day a week for about 4 hours and helps out in that capacity. So I think there's certainly avenues, and I certainly don't want to speak for the chief, but I think there's avenues to be explored with volunteers, but I don't think we have completely all that thought process nailed down.
Anybody else? And then the other thing that was in here, and I'm just going through and we'll come back and have an open discussion, was moving EMS to Public Works. That's right now, Emergency Management Services is in the PD, correct?
That's my job.
Okay. So do you want to go to Public Works?
Well, I'm going to say.
Okay, good to know. All right. So those were the three big recommendations that I pulled out that weren't having to do with, you know, the tour is not the right word, the scheduling stuff and how this coverage was going to go. And then there was recommendations about hiring, or there was confusion, as the chief put it, with regards to the number of staff that the report said they needed to do the coverage, but then it was adequately covered. So we'll when we have our work, if we have our work session, we can go through that, I think. So, so what I would like some discussion from the board about is, do you want to take this on? It's been a while since this has happened and some things have changed. Community's going to continue to grow. But this is something that the chief is looking for some help. I think we heard that last month, but we as a board need to decide what we want to tackle. One of the issues that we've heard a lot about is traffic. Traffic was a moderate issue with the public in this study. We hear a lot about it in our communities all the time. So,
When you say take it on, what do you mean?
well, what the chief and I talked about was going through and re-looking at the staffing study, and then getting our handle on what was in here and what else is unanswered, and what there was some issues as he and I think you discussed last month a little bit, and then taking those issues, concerns, and opportunities as we see them as the advisory board to the council, and having a work group with the council, and then from that decide whether we want to do some public surveying, public information gathering, and then help make recommendations on budgets, and or whether the city should go out and look at some additional funding mechanism to meet the long-term needs for the PD, for the community. I think that was the main crux of what we were talking about last month, was looking down the road with how the city's growing. Are we going to be able to provide the services that the citizens are looking for? So that was kind of getting ahead, is what the chief is looking for, is some help in getting ahead so that we aren't behind the 8 ball like we have been with staffing into the future.
Well, I've reread the report, and I haven't changed my mind. I think I found it kind of ambiguous. It's not a very good report. I mean, it's stating that at current capacity, the police are doing highly effective job. It doesn't really give you any information as to what the future is going to entail. They only did research on 1 year, which is totally insufficient to determine what the rise in the population is going to be, what the rise in calls are going to be, because it's gone over the last 5-10 years. They really give you nothing. I certainly think that we should have some type of perspective as to how we can help the police look into the future and see what the needs are and how to most effectively get there. But this report really doesn't reflect any of that stuff, too, as far as, that's my opinion. It talks a little bit about, I think, volunteers and stuff like that. Shift analysis is horrible. Again, my own perspective of it, but I'd like to, if we're going to help the police department in seeking out what they need, I think we need better information, and that, I don't know how you would do that, other than, I don't know, have you ever done an internal research as to what has happened over the last 5-10 years?
Yes, we have.
And
The chief has looked at that.
okay, those are the things that I like to see.
Okay. No, that's kind of, I think, the vision, that those are the sorts of things we want to get into so that we have a basis to present to a work session with the council and have that discussion, because the council clearly has so many other priorities that they've got to manage for the city as a whole. But as a police advisor, I think they look to us to help analyze some stuff and come up with some recommendations. If there isn't, if the analysis doesn't show much need for change, then that's what we can share. But if there's something that needs to be changed, that's the opportunity that we have as advisory. So I think you're right on in terms of what you've got that expertise that many of us don't. So
I don't have any expertise whatsoever. That's not, I have some experience in that area, especially the 12-hour shifts. They're horrible. And I think studies have shown that after 8 hours, people get tired, brain goes numb. And if you're looking for liability issues from making bad decisions, then you start working 12-hour shifts and you'll have quite a few. But from what I see, that in the report itself, even the recommendation for that 12-hour shift is made on an assumption that it would provide the public with more visual presence, which, according to the report, you already have more than other cities combined. So, what can I say? It's a horrible report.
anybody else?
I think it's good what Ed is saying, that just as far as like, let's dive into the facts of what was gathered of that report, maybe not necessarily like take the opinion that sort of was the opinion as it is, and maybe we can, poke holes in some of that, but some of the information gathering, there are facts in that report, and probably also alongside with, we want to hear what the community has to say, but we also want to hear from the staff what the needs are, and then how do we brainstorm together, or how can we help you obtain those goals or those shortcomings, and also be future looking, so that we're not just staffing for even a few years ago, but staffing for where we're going to be very soon. So maybe it's even a broader it's broader than just this report, but
Yes.
probably in a brainstorming session, digging into some of the facts starting there and then also continuing on our sort of fact-finding mission along the way. That probably would be a good mission to start on.
You know,
Well,
one of-
certainly if we're looking into the future of what the needs are, I mean, we're gonna have the largest high school in the state, which means we're gonna be growing considerably, and what does that entail?
I found this in my stack of stuff as I was preparing for the meeting is, do you know, is there any plans on doing a new edition of this?
I believe that there is one being worked on for 2016.
All right.
So is that 14 though? It
Yeah,
should be the
it's
15.
14.
The 15 is,
Half of
oh, no, 15.
Because this was just about, this was going on when it would have been prepared, or was it? This has some good information in it, including projections for 15, so, but this, I think, have you seen that before?
And that's online, isn't it, Angie?
Yes.
Yeah, that's online.
So,
I also just want to say, you guys spent a lot of time on a strategic plan too. And I think incorporating your strategic plan in with some of this and what the goals are might be a really good way to sort of come up with some goals and ideas. Because I know that that strategic plan is different than the staffing study and has different plans, for lack of a better word. But bringing those two documents together along with your desire to come up with recommendations might be helpful too.
as I remember, the strategic plan basically set goals in terms of the types of services and things that we provided for the community and the atmosphere, or not atmospheres, the situation that we'd like to see here, for at least from law enforcement and public safety. But I think the missing points are, as we look forward and help the department and the chief and the city, is projections of population growth and funding, and I'm sure there's statewide projections on crime and stuff that we need to include in the assessment, or at least let the experts do that. So let me ask, does anybody else have anything they want to say, Lori, or?
I would like to pursue the CSO aspect from the position, especially from the position as the liaison with the Police Foundation. I'm kind of intrigued with the idea of volunteers helping out where possible. I mean, I'm sure it's not going to be possible in all of the, the areas where you could use assistance, but, certainly, I don't know, I'm envisioning things like directing traffic or something like that. I mean, it would certainly warrant further discussion. And I think that might be something that the Police Foundation could be interested in. I mean, it fits in with our mission, trying to help between the public and the police department. I think that would be worth investigating. And as we were sitting here, I already texted our chair and got a nod.
Anybody else?
Just a question, talking about volunteers, you don't use a reserve program.
No, and it's been more of a matter of being able to support and run the reserve program, much like volunteers. Angela oversees the majority of all the volunteers that come currently, manages their tasks and that type of thing. We will need somebody to run the reserve program and to have adequate staff available to be able to do that. We haven't done it yet because we want to make sure that we did it right and that we had sufficient staffing to be able to devote to it, which includes constant training and support of the reserves, making sure that we have enough people on the road that are available to train the reserves in a FTO, field training status. We really haven't had sufficient staffing to be able to do that.
Would they have to go through the law enforcement classes?
Yeah, so reserves in Washington County would attend a Washington County Reserve Academy, but then we would also have them involved in a field training program, much like a regular police officer would. And so they'd be assigned a coach, in theory, who take them through the FTEP program, and then it'd just be a constant, monitoring the reserve status and making sure that they got their hours in, and making sure that they got what training they needed to be able to deploy on special events and those types of things.
So would the CSOs have to go through that training?
So, yeah, the CSO would be kind of a hybrid of that, certainly because they're an employee. I've made a proposal to the chief, and it's gone over to City Hall already in regards to the CSO type of position. And so it's yet to be decided, and yet to be determined exactly what that's going to look like in the end. But yes, I would hope that our CSO would have the type of same exact training and would be a certified reserve police officer, because that type of training is really key to being able to go out and integrate, our services with the public here in Sherwood, and to be able to deliver the type of service that we believe Sherwood deserves.
So, thank you, Bill. Go ahead.
What does a CSO position, what would the budget need to be for that?
Probably very similar, but I think it would need to be a little bit higher as far as salary and that type of thing from what our current code compliance evidence technician is currently at. Because in my proposal, that person would actually have a reserve police commission, so that they would be able to take certain actions as a police officer, not all actions, but also be able to protect themselves in the public by being armed.
Well, that would be an armed person.
I propose that it is an armed position.
And a reserve is armed, a sworn?
Yes, that's a sworn position.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? So, the vision, and the chief and I talked a little bit about it, and I presented it here, but I want to restate it and get concurrence that this is the way we want to go. But the vision is to do our own, build upon this staffing study, good, bad, or indifferent, and update information and do some analysis through a couple meetings. And then, depending on how that goes, hopefully have something to take to council for a work session. I think we're kind of in the dark right now, knowing when and what, because we need to do our homework first. But
A couple of meetings with who?
internally, our board, as a board, advisory board with the chief, and setting out kind of a work plan, a study plan to say, okay, we need this kind of information. Here's how we're going to tackle it. Maybe divide up into some small work groups that will do certain parts, and then come together and see if we have an assessment that can make some recommendations that we can work through with the council on. That's kind of the vision. But right now, the first question is this something that we want to do? And that's the question on the table, I think.
Not too low, but I think it would be helpful, yes.
Agreed.
All right. Do we need a formal motion? Or not?
It seems like it's just sort of agenda item to
Yeah,
set.
that's where I'm at. Okay, all right. So I will follow up with the chief, and Captain Daniels, if you want to, you'll share with him what we discussed.
Absolutely.
That would be great. So the vision is that the next couple meetings, or however long it takes, we'll want to dig into some of the data and vision and Council President Harris, I agree. I think we need to use the strategic plan as a basis of how we look forward and assess stuff, how it meets that good cover for presenting stuff to council.
And I
So-
think that helps bring your staff to non-staff study.
Yes.
So how are you envisioning you're going to do this? Is this going to be at the regular monthly meetings? Are we going to have separate meetings? And are we going to or is there going to be an order to tackling this?
I think that's the discussion that we need to have with the chief at the next meeting.
Okay.
And maybe with some pre-stuff with Amy and I, we can at least help scope stuff out to present to this board. But no, we need to develop and come to a consensus of a work plan to tackle this. And I think there's a potential of having some small work groups that work on big individual chunks on this. And I think that's what all of us are here for. So that's my vision. But I need to talk to the chief too about it. So, okay. Any other discussion on that business? Okay, great. Counselor news, you're up.
So we interviewed our last recreation facility group that presented us with their RFPs, and we are hoping to have a decision by the 15th of August, but I'm not super confident in that date because there's just a lot of data. Our 3 proposals were probably each that thick, and then we had about 2-hour interviews with all of them, and it's just a lot of information to go through, and every time we think we've got it, there's more questions that come up, and then we have to send them to them, and then they have to answer them and send them back, and that all takes time. So August 15th is our hopeful date. I would say September 5th is more likely, but it's going pretty well overall. This coming Tuesday will pass the resolution to put the cannabis statement on the ballot that the group that collected the petitioners collected the signatures and got the way more than the proper amount needed, and that's just housework. We don't have anything to do with it. We just have to certify it to get it on the ballot. So that will be happening this on our next meeting, and we have 5 applicants for planning commission and 4 for budget, so that's exciting. We're going to have a full budget and planning commission soon. Most people have heard that Dan King resigned, so we will open up that seat on the council and decide as a group if we're going to fill the seat interimly until the November election or leave it empty. Our attorney will tell us what his recommendation is, and we'll go from there. And we've already had a couple people call and ask about it, so there's interest in getting on there, which is good. We also will be going over the no parking issue, the parking problem that has come to light primarily because of the new townhomes on Edie. People are parking across the street from them, and the people who live pretty much anywhere around there are not happy that that's suddenly a parking lot. And the council chose to put information, that's not the right word that I'm thinking of, but parameters, thank you, to allow Joe, our city manager, to make parking decisions so that every parking issue doesn't have to come to council, which it does right now. So once we pass that on Tuesday, you will see signs go up over there that that's going to be a no parking zone going forward. And then when people come to the city for parking issues, the minor ones will be able to be managed by city staff and not necessarily have to come to council every time. We'll still take the big ones like permit areas, if somebody wants a permitted area, like by the high school. But minor ones that take data to make the decision, we're gonna let the staff take that on.
So the decisions, what the parameters to delegate to Joe and staff, right?
Yes, yeah, right now, everything has to come to council, so we just felt like that was not necessary in most things. A lot of them are fairly cut and dry. Anybody can still disagree with us and bring it to council if they have an issue, but they're pretty simple decisions for the most part. And the big ones, like I said, will still stay with council, like permitting, parking, stuff like that. We're busy with development. Development is booming in Sherwood, and so that's keeping the city quite busy and entertained. That's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions? All right, thanks. All right, Captain Daniels, you're up.
So the first thing I have here on the agenda is the new police officer, Kelly Bertrand. He started with us a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, he is, I think, camping right now and unavailable to attend the meeting tonight. I believe he will be available at the next meeting, so you'll get introduced to Officer Bertrand. He was a lateral officer with experience from the Hillsborough Police Department, where he served as a street crimes detective as well as a patrol officer. He was a background investigator with the Hillsborough Police Department and has a wealth of experience. And even before he was with Hillsborough, he started his career in Tualatin. He lives here in Sherwood and is excited to be a member of our department. Once he's completed with his field training, then his assignment will be school resource officer. So once he completes his training, which should be pretty rapidly, but it's all up to him. We want to make sure he's got a great Sherwood foundation before he's off on his own. But we're going to be integrating him into the school even during his training process. So be looking forward to that. No other staffing report at this time. The chief asked me to mention a few things. The Oregon Peace Officers Association holds an annual awards banquet on November 3rd. They will be doing that at Spirit Mountain. And it's a very large occasion where they recognize heroic acts and just outstanding behavior by police across our state. We will have officers that will receive awards there on November 3rd. So it's definitely a great event to be at and be a part of, just to see some folks very deservedly getting recognition in our state. Pretty cool. And in no particular order, we will be doing a Tippacop at the Old Spaghetti Factory for the first time at the Old Spaghetti Factory. That'll be happening on August 16th from 5 until closing. We just received notification yesterday that the Red Robin Tippacop will be on October 21st. And the most notable thing for us happening really soon is National Night Out, to try and bring all of our neighborhoods together and chat and have a good exchange with their police department. It's happening on August 1st from 5 until 9 p.m. at Henry Square. So we're getting all revved up for that currently. And then I went to an interesting meeting this week. As everybody's probably seen, Carney Wilson, Wilson Phillips, is opening the cafe and production facility for her sweet treats that she's going to offer, Love Bites by Carney. And we will be assisting in that grand opening on August 26th, which is a Saturday. The festivities go from 10 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. Wilson Phillips will be doing an acoustic concert that afternoon as well. So it should be very exciting. We're anticipating a lot of people coming. She's very excited to be here in Sherwood, and I think it's a really good thing. So I just want to make mention of that we'll be involved in all the planning and preparation for that as well.
Great. So back to our two academy officers.
Mm-hmm.
They're due to be done in September.
I believe they graduate on September 8th.
And then they have a year or so where they're,
Well, they went to the academy, they started, one started for about a month
Okay.
in training before it went to the academy. The other one had about a week's worth of training before she went to the academy, but she was also a parole probation officer for more than 10 years before we hired her as a police officer. But when they come back from the academy after the 8th, then they'll be integrated back with their coaches. And so depending on where they left off, they'll pick up and hit the ground running. Presumably for about, let's just say for another 3 months, so it takes us probably through December in field training. I estimate that they'll be released on their own either late December or sometime in January.
okay.
So that we're anticipating them completely on their own and out on patrol at the beginning of our February rotation. So the schedule looks full right now, which is something that hasn't happened in a very long time.
Could you, and I've asked this question of you and the chief in a small group, but could you describe how you do your shift, not bidding, but how you periodically change the shifts and reallocate who's working when and where and stuff like that?
So every 6 months, we rotate shifts, and it kind of goes back to the shift bid. By contract, our employees are allowed to bid for shifts by seniority. So once a year, and that time is usually around October, we will post what the schedule will look like for the following year, beginning February 1st. There's what we call 2 rotations. So they bid for the first rotation, which is February 1st until August 1st, and then August 1st through February 1st. We do that to kind of offset rotation times and that kind of thing. We used to rotate at the beginning of July, which was very problematic with July 4th and that, as well as January 1st, being New Year. It was always a very problematic time. So we offset it a month, and it seems to work a lot better. So officers have the opportunity by seniority to sign up for their particular shift and or days off. We do limit it by contract, so you can only spend 2 years on one shift, and once you've spent 2 years, let's say, I really like to work graveyard, and so I bid, because I have enough seniority, I bid for graveyard, and I spent 2 years there. Well, at the conclusion of that second year, I have to bid to a different shift. I've got to go somewhere else for at least 6 months. So that requirement's on everybody. We've only had one time where folks got kind of jammed up, only because of their seniority. They were only able to bid for one particular location, and we had to do some kind of moving around to get them to a different shift to fulfill the requirements of the contract.
Okay. Any questions, Captain Daniels, on anything he shared? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving right along. Citizen comments. Do we have any citizen comments? Please.
Good evening. I'm Jean Simpson. I'm the chair of the planning commission, but I'm not representing the commission tonight. I just, as an active member of that commission, I get the weekly updates from the city manager. And I saw your meeting tonight, and I read your minutes from the last meeting, which seems odd, but I also read the minutes for the planning commission, which are much longer. And it seems like what you guys were talking about last night is a topic that comes before the planning commission a lot, which is traffic and traffic concerns. And as I see you struggling with community outreach and surveys and how to get citizen input, I would invite you to, talk with us, talk to me, talk to our staff liaison. We have people come to us and testify usually in 2 general categories. One is as an application that's coming in for a new project. Hey, there's going to be too much traffic. And that's, all driven by code and ITE manuals and engineers. And then people who come to us after words and say, people are speeding through my neighborhood, can you fix it? And I feel those fall into two categories. My personal opinion is you have people speeding through neighborhood streets, which are usually your neighbors, so you should probably just go over there and
Or they're teenagers.
or they're teenagers and just go give them the stink eye and say, you know. But then there's also really valid concerns of cut-through traffic. We all know that Google Maps uses a couple of very skinny streets in Sherwood as cut-through traffic. And what we've found with the planning commission is we don't have the tools to assist them because it's already an already completed application. And we've had challenges finding an avenue through city staff of a clear defined process. And I know the police struggle with that because they've got, it's police, it's code compliance, it's city staff. It's a process that hasn't been very well defined. And as you guys struggle with this process, come at it from a citizen standpoint, who would you call with a problem and what would the process be for resolution? And that's all I would ask, because I mean, and it's crazy things that you don't, how do you stop people on Oregon Street from speed? They come around the roundabout and they're whipping through Old Town at 40 miles an hour. That's, I see it, but, there's only so many police officers that can do so much and you have to modify behavior. But I have stupid things. I drive 25 miles an hour down Langer Farms Parkway. I have been passed in front of the Catholic Church for doing 25 miles an hour on that street. You can't fix all problems, but some of this cut-through traffic and known problems, I think that finding a defined process that citizens can reach out to and knowing where to go would be helpful, in my personal opinion. So, am I off base at all? A lot of.
I appreciate it. I can see where the planning, as you've described your role in the planning commission and your nexus versus what the department has and where there's, I think this is something that we can thoroughly discuss and maybe come up with some recommendations too.
Yeah, and we've been trying to work with the staff to figure out how we can help define a process. So I would like to take it back to the planning commission before I make any other comments, but I saw it on your agenda last meeting. I didn't know if you were going to talk about it again tonight, so that's why I was here this evening.
No, I think it fits in with what we need to help advise the PD about. So thank you for bringing it to us.
No problem. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything else from the board?
I actually had a comment about this,
Okay.
like a little side note. I just thought it was really interesting and like educational from like a younger perspective I thought it was really good insight into what goes on here, just because like the younger generation doesn't know too much like what's going on here unless you're like on the board here. That's how I find out my information. So I thought that this was really neat because it's not like a picture book, but it puts it in like pretty basic terms for everyone. So I think you said they were like maybe working on another one, but I think this is a really good idea.
All right, thank you. All right, is there any other business? I call the meeting to adjournment. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.